Hello everyone, and welcome to the next video on files. So in the previous video we covered file input. So we covered how you open a file in Python and then bring the data from that file into your program. So now that file is on some level part of your program, and you can do calculations with it or manipulate it or whatever. You can get that data from a file to the program. In this video we switch perspectives from getting data into the program, and instead we'll talk about getting data from the program out to a file. So this video covers how a program can write data to a file rather than just taking in data from a file. So the goal of this video is to introduce that concept. How do you write data to a file from the program? And we'll just do two examples. One of them will be numeric, so that will write to a .csv file or a spreadsheet, and the other example will be a text example. Just like last time, we'll do one example with numbers and an example with text. Here's the syntax for writing to a file. So you're going to have to create a file object as before, and use an open command as before, and as before, here's the name of the file. So notice the only thing that changes in this setup here, this command of opening a file, last time instead of a W, there was an R, and that R stood for read. So read the file so that you can bring the data into the program. W now stands for write. So we are now going to be opening this file for the purpose of writing to it. And I should note, if the file doesn't exist, Python will create it for you. So this command can both open a pre-existing file or create a new file and then open it. Okay, with the W there means you can write to the file. There's one more mode we will cover in this video, and instead of W there's an A. A stands for append. This is also a writing to mode, and the difference will be subtle. So I'll show you in the compiler the difference between these two modes. But in append mode, anything you write to the file just goes at the end of the file. In write mode, if you open the file and write, you will oftentimes be writing over the data that was already there. So you have to be a little careful with write mode. If you keep opening the same file over and over again and writing to it, you're going to be overwriting previous data, whereas appending just opens that file and then jumps down to the end of the file and puts any new data down there. So before I show you how all of this works in the compiler, the last thing to note about writing to files is that if you want to do that, when you are done writing, you have to close the file. Okay, so you open it here and you close it here. In general, you should always close the files, but closing a file is not necessary for the program to function properly when you are reading data in. Okay, so you should probably still close the file if all you're doing is reading in, but it doesn't hurt the program to not close it. But when you're writing to a file, you must close the file to get the data writing to be complete. Okay, so let's put the slides aside, and now let me jump to the compiler. Okay, here's the first example. This will be a numeric example. So I'm going to open a file called numbers.csv, and I'm going to write to it. And before actually running this and seeing how it works, let's just say out loud what's happening here. For k in range 10, so k will click through the values 0 through 9. Notice the command here. This .write, that's how you put something in a function, or in a file, excuse me. So the .write is how you actually will put this k value into that file, which is numbers.csv. So what seems to be happening here is I'm going to write the values 0 through 9 to that file, to that numbers.csv. And then I will close that file when I am done with it. Okay, so first I just want to click play, and my desktop is a complete mess, and you might have trouble seeing it. But notice there is no numbers.csv. If there were such a file, it would be right here. So I have this folder called meme photos, and then an article here called negative vote weight. Sorry. I, I, I can't quite think through the alphabetization here. So anyway, but this numbers.csv would live between negative vote weight and whatever this file is, 1 lemon versus 2 lemons. Anyway, so there's no such file there, right? So when I click play, notice it creates a file for me. This numbers.csv just popped into existence. You know, it wasn't there before. So now when I open it, I suppose I'm expecting to see those 9 or 10 numbers, 0 through 9. When I open this, though, notice there's nothing there. Okay, so something went wrong, I guess. So all that to say, when you write to a file, you will need this command, this .write, but there are a couple of other things you'll need. So as we talked about last time, a CSV file, a file with numbers in it, even though those are numbers, Python is thinking of them as strings. So not like the number 5, but the string 5, like the symbol 5. So 5 as something that can't be like added or subtracted. Anyway, so when you write to a file, you will have to think of them in the same way. So first I'm going to do this. I'm going to make k into a string. And then I'm going to write it to that file. Okay, so the CSV file needs strings written to it. So now I'm going to hit play here. So now I'm going to write the string 0 and the string 1, string 2, whatever. And now let me open this. And notice, you can see in there, well, maybe you can see, make this much bigger. It put in there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? There's, I suppose, a 0 out front, but when you put the 0 at the beginning of a number, the 0 is not visible in Excel. Unless you make it be. But anyway, there are those numbers, you know, but Excel is thinking of this as whatever, 123,456,000. It just puts them all in the same cell. And that's not really what we wanted, I don't think anyway. I think we really wanted those numbers as discrete lines in this file. So let me come back here. Let me close this. Okay, well, what happened was when I wrote the 1, then the 2, then the 3. I never told the writer to include a new line. Like I never forced this program to create a new line after each number was added. So I'm just going to do that here. The new line character is \n. So now if we just read this out loud in plain English, what is this program doing? It's opening this file. If it exists, otherwise it creates it and then opens it. And then for k ranging from 0 to 9, make k into a string, put that k into the file, and then start a new line. And then just keep doing that. At the end, close. Okay, so let me hit play. And now if I open numbers.csv, notice, again, sorry, I don't know how to make it open with it big. This is what we're expecting to see when we open that file, right? Like I told the program to put the numbers 0 through 9 in the spreadsheet, and here they are, finally. Okay, so if you want to write numbers to a spreadsheet, this is the kind of setup you'd have. So, I mean, you can do whatever you want here, right? So like, instead of for k in range 10, suppose that I wanted to like write 100 numbers to that file, and I want each of them to be randomly chosen. So if I want to do randomness, I need that random there. And so maybe here, I'll let my my value range between, I mean, I don't care, right? 1 and 10, something like that. Okay, now I want to write that x to the file instead of the k. The k is just going to make the loop run 100 times. So I'm going to choose 100 random numbers. So I'll just replace all these k's with x's. So this program now will 100 times choose a random number between 1 and 10, convert it to a string, write it to that CSV, write a new line, etc. Okay, so let me hit play. Now if I open numbers CSV, notice that's what's there. These are all randomly chosen numbers between 1 and 10. Okay, the last thing before moving on to text, notice something else though. notice the content of this file is entirely new. So remember, I used to have the numbers 0 through 9 in the first 10 rows. Notice that data is gone. Okay? So I overwrote what was in the file, and the old data was lost. So to conclude the number part of this video, let me just remind you that we had this other mode called append. If you want to keep this data in here and just go to the end of the file and add stuff the next time you use the file, you would use the append mode rather than write mode. So let me just notice here, right, there are 100 lines of data in this file. So at line 100, there's a 9, right? Well, suppose later I come along and say, well, I actually want to add more to this file. I want there to be like 150 lines, but I want the first 100 to stay the same. I want to add 50 new lines. Okay, so let me close this. Now in my compiler, if I know I want to keep what's already there, I would do an A right there instead of a W. And so now I can add like 50 more such numbers. And let me just open it back up. Make it big again. Okay, so now if I scroll all the way down, okay, so line 100, remember there was a 9 there, right? So the old data is still there, and now I just tacked on 50 more lines of stuff. Okay, so all of that to say, if you're going to write something to a file, you should decide if you want to overwrite what's there or you want to add on to the end of what's there. Because the next time you run the program, right, that choice matters. Okay, so now I just want to show you a text example. So this code here is all on Moodle, including these files. So I have here Hamlet lowercase.txt, Hamlet first in lines.txt, etc. This Hamlet lowercase.txt, that's on Moodle. I'm going to just create these other two files here inside this code. So let me open Hamlet.txt, lowercase, and just see what it looks like. This is what Hamlet-lowercase.txt is. It is the complete text of the play Hamlet by Shakespeare. And it's all in lowercase. So the reason I put it all in lowercase is because if you want to search for certain words, like, I don't know, Horatio or friend or whatever, I don't care. If everything is lowercase, such searches are easier. You don't have to worry about like friend with a capital F or friend with a lowercase f, or sometimes in this file, friend would be all caps. So if everything's lowercase, you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so let me just quickly walk you through this sample code here that's just dealing with text. So Hamlet-lowercase.txt, I'm just going to read that. I'm not going to do anything to that. I'm not going to overwrite it. And once I open that, I'm going to do this read lines command from last time, so that now Hamlet-lowercase, the text of that play, I have it line by line inside the code if I want to read line by line. So I now do several things. The first thing I do is just I count the number of times the word Hamlet appears. So you can just, I mean, I don't know if you care or not, right? But suppose you cared about how often Shakespeare wrote the word Hamlet inside that play. You can count that. So notice what happens here. For line in file lines. So I'm going to go line by line through the play. And once I'm at a specific line, I'm just going to do the word search like we've done before for the word Hamlet. Okay, so a specific line inside that file is just a big string. So let me just bring that that play back up. Hamlet lowercase. Zoom in on it. Okay, so line 1 of this play, of this file, is this entire string. The Tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. Then there are a couple of empty lines, so they're just empty strings. And now the fourth line, or I guess technically line 3, right? Because we always start counting at 0, is that string. By space, William space, Shakespeare, new line. Okay, that whole thing is the string. So anyway, a single line is a string. So you can search through it as we've searched through strings before, right? And now you just ask, hey, if what I'm currently looking at, right, the 6 characters I'm currently at, starting at position K and then all the way up to K plus 6, if I see the word Hamlet, right, if those 6 characters are Hamlet, then up the count. Okay, so again, we've done this kind of structure a couple times, but it is kind of complicated having a nested for loop structure here, right? The outer for loop is going line by line. The inner for loop says, okay, once you're in a given line, now I got to search character by character through that line. And I'm searching for 6 characters in a row that give you Hamlet. Okay, so you can print the count at the end. So when I run this program, it will print whatever the number of times Hamlet appears. Okay, now this next task I have done here is now for line and file lines. So the same thing, right? I'm going to go through the play line by line. Notice what I do now. File2.write line. So file 2, I'm just going to fill up with the lines of the original play. So if you just kept doing this, right, all you'd be doing is creating a copy of the original file. Okay, so the original file is Hamlet lowercase. File 2, notice, is Hamlet first in lines.txt is what I've called that. So notice this for loop down here, right? It doesn't just write lines to file 2. There's also this counter variable, and if that counter ever exceeds 20, which is my in value, right? If that count ever exceeds 20, so maybe I should put an in right there, then you break the for loop. Okay, so the for loop finishes, and then you close file 2. Okay, so what this for loop is doing is, whatever n is, 20 in this case, you're just creating the first n lines of the original play in a new file. So if I run this now, first of all, notice over there it prints a 117 because I told it to print the Hamlet count. So the word Hamlet must appear in that play 117 times, we've learned. And now, if I minimize all this, close this, right? Hamlet is what I called it. Hamlet first n lines. It created that file for me, and notice it's not very long, right? If you count, you will notice this is the first 20 lines of that play. Okay, but now if I come back in here, and not n equals 20, but n equals 50 or something, now I'm going to pick up more lines. So again, it prints 117 there, notice, right? So the, the count of Hamlets hasn't changed. What has changed, though, is this file, this Hamlet first n lines. This is now the first 50 lines of that play, including all these like empty lines, right? Okay, so all of that to say, one use of file writing is you can just pick off subsections of some bigger file. If, for whatever reason, you only cared about the first however many lines of Hamlet, you could like just grab those from the original file and write them to a new file. The last example I'll show you that involves writing to a file is this last for loop here. So it's going to do the same thing in terms of iteration over file lines. So for line and file lines, so going through Hamlet one line at a time, notice this command here, line equals line dot upper. So dot upper, what that does is it takes the string line, right? The line is a string, and it makes all of the letters uppercase. So I'm just reading on each line, making everything I see uppercase, and then writing that to file 3. So file 3, let me just see what's called Hamlet uppercase. Okay, let me open that file. And notice, I mean you can see, but let me zoom in. This is the entire play, but everything is uppercase now. So who knows why you might want that, right? But you now have both lowercase and uppercase versions of the play. So let me just scroll. It's the entire play, right? Because I never broke a loop. I never told it to stop going. Okay, so here are just a few examples of writing to a file, right? The main commands are these, right? The dot write thing. And as we saw earlier, if you want to deal with numbers, you do have to do this obnoxious thing where you turn numbers into strings to write them into the CSV file. There are, of course, ways around that, right? But for now, it's not too obnoxious to do this. And you need to write a new line. With text, there are all sorts of things you can do, right? This first example here I just put in to have another example of reading stuff from a file. Here's something you might want to do with a play or a book or whatever. Do a word count like this. Notice I didn't do the thing we've done previously of searching for literal words like this, right? The reason I didn't do that is because Hamlet like never shows up as a subword of other words. You know, the way that the word the shows up inside of there. You know, Hamlet doesn't do that, so you don't have to be as careful with your word search here. But anyway, so you can do that sort of thing, and you can take in the file data and write things to other files if you feel like. Okay, so that's the point of the video.